Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So Five Guys is one of my favorite restaurants, in large part because it's one of the few that I can safely eat at. I have high-functioning autism, and I like to avoid food colorings and added sugars. They make their French fries out of pure peanut oil. I do have a little bit of a minor complaint, but this is one where I can go into the Five Guys and practice some advocacy for myself. When I go into the Five Guys, I would prefer if the person preparing the fries changes their gloves, because, again, the dietary sensitivities. So I go in there, I order the fries, and I say, would you mind changing your gloves? In an ideal world, that would be the end of it, right? The person preparing it would change their gloves. You know, there are a lot of reasons why you might want a cook to change their gloves, right? Whether it be autism, it could even be a religious matter, right? It could just be a preference, right? You don't like the taste of other stuff, right? You get the idea, right? It shouldn't matter why, right? Most people should understand that there are a multitude of reasons. I'm sure maybe none of the cooks in there are religious or anything, but there certainly could be a picky eater among them, right? I know plenty of, I worked at a tutoring center. I know plenty of kids who would not like their food to have a hint of taste of other stuff, right? So that should be understandable. But I always get into almost a minor argument. First, sometimes the person behind the counter who's a minimum wage teenager doesn't even want to take the suggestion, right? Doesn't think it's important. Sometimes they argue back at me, you know, maybe you should have some whatever to kind of desensitize from the allergy, right? Some people like to pretend they have a medical degree even though they're working at Five Guys, right? For some bizarre reason. But that's a minor issue, right? More importantly is sometimes I go into the Five Guys with somebody important, right? A first date, or it might even be a job interview, and it forces me to do this. So lately I've been using, when I go out by myself, use it as a chance to practice how to do this beautifully and make sure to de-escalate it so nobody has to feel ashamed of the matter. But I just saw an article about Five Guys shares why it keeps the potatoes in the lobby, and it kind of backfires. And I thought it was one of these matters again. It turns out the customers were now upset that that they have no storage in the back, and it shows they can afford 200 bags of potatoes because they charge whatever price a burger. Now, why is that anybody's business, right? When I go into Five Guys, in terms of the price, I think about whether or not I'm getting something that's worth more than whatever I paid for it, right? Now, lately, I've been having to think about whether or not when I go there with a date, if the guy behind the counter is going to embarrass me, right? When it's a real high-profile event that I'm going there for, right? Whether it be a really important job interview or a date that I really don't want to screw up. Sometimes I even go in there in advance to let them know what's going on, because that's worth it to me, right? When I'm just going by myself, or I'm going with somebody that I can trust, then I'll go in there and make it a beautiful scene, right? But why does it matter? This is a big soreness of mine, because a lot of times people don't beat at the same wavelength as me. So, for example, I was working at a startup university a few years ago, and my colleague would often hit me up to donate my paid time off to her because she saw me, quote unquote, oh, you have all this time to go to Poland and to go to the Computer Olympiad. Basically make judgment on what I'm doing, right? And think that I have a lot of stuff to spare, right? Anyway, it's one of those, it's none of your business kind of matters, but unfortunately, we humans are very good at coloring what we think is important or not, and it really gets in the way, right? I'll have to think about, at my new job, how I'm going to handle going on vacation, because I've never been able to successfully dodge telling people where I go on vacation. Coworkers are always very up in your face, right? I really liked it when we work remotely. You could hide some of that stuff.